Welcome to the Clinical Podcast Series brought to you by the American Academy of Optometry Foundation. The topic for this episode is the association between baseline eye tracking performance and concussion assessments in high school football players. I'd like to thank our host, Dr. April Jasper, our topical expert, Dr. Nick Fogt, and our topical editor, Dr. Maureen Plaumann. And now I'll turn it over to Dr. Jasper for their review.
Hi, everyone. I'm April Jasper, and I'm speaking today with Dr. Nick Fogt. Nick, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
So the study that we're going to talk about today is the Oldham et al. July 2021 OVS paper, and here's the title: The Association Between Baseline Eye Tracking Performance and Concussion Assessments in High School Football Players. Welcome, Nick, and let's start right out. I can tell you, my son played high school football, and I knew a little bit about concussion. I think many of us saw the movie, and so we were aware, but it's even more important to stay up to date with the latest research. So can you give us a brief introduction to the paper?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. So the idea behind this test really revolves around the fact that reliable tests and test batteries for concussion diagnosis and return to play decisions after a concussion are needed. So we know that vision and oculomotor issues are very common in children after concussion. Accommodative insufficiency, convergence insufficiency, and saccadic dysfunction occur in up to 51% of adolescents who reported to a concussion clinic. What's not so clear and what this paper addresses is whether saccadic function and testing of it tells you something different from our other typical tests like the NPC or something like that, and whether saccadic testing, what the threshold for our testing should be when we look at saccades. How good should they be before we allow someone, for example, to return to play from a concussion?
So remind us again, go through the details a little bit more. I did mention high school football players, but who were the participants in the study?
So it was a well-powered study, 102 participants, 14 to 18 years old. They may have had a concussion in the past, but not recently. And these individuals were anticipating competing in football in the coming season.
And then what methods were used, or what methods can you tell us about for this study?
Yeah, so the participants completed a couple of different neurocognitive tests. There was also a concussion symptom checklist. And then the other tests were NPC, near point of convergence, binocular accommodative amplitude, and then something called the box score, which is a test of saccadic eye tracking, basically, as I understand it.
And then what were the primary results?
So this was pretty interesting. The box score results were not significantly associated with any of the other tests, suggesting that the box score is a unique thing that should be added along with these other tests. The one correlation that did occur was between the binocular accommodative amplitude. This was correlated with prior concussions. And the authors, although it's not known at this point, the authors speculated either that the binocular accommodative amplitude continued to be affected long-term after concussions, or alternatively, the binocular amplitude of accommodation is associated with your risk of undergoing or having a concussion. Those were the primary takeaways.
Okay, so what would you say now to clinicians that they need to be really thinking about, and what is their takeaway as a result of this study?
So several things. One is the binocular amplitude of accommodation very well might suggest either that the patient has had a concussion, or, as I mentioned before, that they are at higher risk for concussion. So that's certainly a measurement that should be made. The other interesting thing along those lines was that that attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, which is known to influence neurocognitive scores, did not affect the box score. the near point of convergence or the binocular amplitude of accommodation. So those sorts of pre-diagnoses wouldn't affect those tests. And then finally, and probably most significantly, objective eye movement recording like that in the box test can provide a visual assessment and should be added probably to the overall test battery, both in diagnosing concussion and in determining whether someone should return to play following following a concussion.
Wow, that's all great information. And I know it's helpful to us in clinic, but also great to know as a parent as well. So Nick, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been great to discuss the study, and I know that it's going to be very impactful for all of us going forward.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been fun.
And a special thanks to CooperVision for their educational grant to make it all happen.